Moshulu is a four-masted steel barque built by William Hamilton and Company on the River Clyde in Scotland in 1904. The largest remaining original windjammer. She is currently a floating restaurant docked in Penn's Landing, Philadelphia, adjacent to the museum ships US Olympia and US Becuna. History. Originally named Kurt after Dr. Kurt Siemers, Director General and President at the Hamburg Shipping Company GHJ Siemers and Amp Co. She was, along with her sister ship Hans, one of the last four-masted steel barques to be built on the Clyde. Constructed for GHJ, Siemers and Amp Co. to be used in the nitrate trade at a cost of £36,000. She was launched in 1904. Her first master was Captain Christian Schutt, followed by Captain Wolfgang H. G. Tonneson in 1908, who made a fast voyage from Newcastle, Australia, to Valparaiso with a cargo of coal in 31 days. Between 1904 and 1914, under German ownership, Kurt shipped coal from Wales to South America, nitrate from Chile to Germany, coal from Australia to Chile, and coke and patent fuel from Germany to Santa Rosalia, Mexico. On the outbreak of World War I in 1914, Kurt was sailed to Oregon under the command of Captain Tonneson, then laid up in Astoria until being seized when the United States entered the war in 1917. She was first renamed Dreadnought then, because there was already a sailing ship of that name registered in the U.S. She was renamed the Moshulu by the First Lady of the United States and wife of President Woodrow Wilson, Edith Wilson. Between 1917 and 1920, Moshulu was owned by the U.S. Shipping Board and carried wool and chrome between North America, Manila and Australia. From 1920 to 1935, Moshulu was in various private hands based in San Francisco. From 1920 to 1922, it was owned by the Moshulu Navigation Co., San Francisco. In 1922, it was sold to James Eisen of San Francisco, and, in 1922, it was repurchased by Charles Nelson. The big four-masted barque ran in the timber trade along the U.S. West Coast to Australia and South Africa from 1920 to 1928. After her last timber run to Melbourne and Geelong, Australia, in 1928, she was laid up in Los Angeles. Later on, she was kept in places in or near Seattle, Washington, Lake Union, Winslow and Esquimalt in British Columbia, Canada, 100 nautical miles northwest of Seattle. In 1935, the Moshulu was bought for $12,000 by Gustav Ericsson. On the 14th of March 1935, when the contract was signed, Captain Gunnar Bowman took over the ship and sailed it to Port Victoria. Gustav Ericsson had her operate in the grain trade from Australia to Europe. In 1937, John Albright sailed on her as a young seaman. During the period of Ericsson ownership, the working language of the ship was Swedish, even though it sailed under the Finnish flag. The ship's home port at the time, Mariehamn, is in the Swedish-speaking Åland Islands of Finland. At the end of 1938, the ship left Belfast for Port Lincoln and Port Victoria in South Australia, under the command of Captain Mikhail Sjogren and would later to be famous travel writer Eric Newby, then aged 18, on board as an apprentice seaman. Moshulu arrived in Queenstown on June 10, 1938, after 91 days at sea, winning the very last race of square-rigged sailing ships between Australia and Europe. The ship was seized by the Germans in 1940 when she returned to Kristiansand, Norway, again under the command of Captain Mikael Sjögren and with a cargo of wheat from Buenos Aires. She was derigged step by step in the 1940s, and, after having capsized in a storm close to shore at a beach in Ostervik near Narvik in 1947, she was demasted by a salvaging company to be re-erected, stabilized, and towed to Bergen in July 1948. The ship's hull was sold to Trygve Sommerfeldt of Oslo. A few months later, the ship was transferred to Sweden to be used as a grain store in Stockholm from 1948 to 1952. Then she was sold to the German shipowner Heinz Schlieffen, who wanted to put her back to use under the name Oplag as a merchant marine training ship carrying cargo. Schlieffen already used the four-masted steel barques Pamir and Passat for that purpose, but before Moshulu was re-rigged, Schlieffen went into bankruptcy. In 1953, Moshulu was sold to the Swedish Farmers State Union of Stockholm, and again it was used as a floating warehouse beginning on the 16th of November 1953. In 1961, the Finnish government bought the ship for 3,200 tons of Russianry. She was towed to Naantali, a town near Turku, and she continued to be used as a grain warehouse. In 1970, the ship was bought by the American Specialty Restaurants Corporation, who rigged her out in the Netherlands with phony masts, yards, and lines and eventually towed her to South Street Seaport, New York City. Other sources have it that the Walt Disney Company bought the ship but soon transferred it to the American Specialty Restaurants Corporation.